Hello, witches. Welcome to S.A.S.S. It's February 18th. Um, we may have a smaller group for S.A.S.S today, which is totally okay. We had some of our cousins participate in an online virtual event, and that today is their last day for that. So they will be over doing that, and we'll be over here doing this. So it'll be like a very casual Sunday. Um, as you know, we do record this and post it to our public YouTube page. So you are welcome to be on or off camera for this. I will post the terms of engagement in the chat. And yeah, today is a day to really just talk about whatever is on your mind and anything that come up. We were just chit-chatting a little bit about New Orleans and Salem and witchy places to visit. Um, but we can keep talking about that, or we can also change if someone has something on their mind. Let us know. We do use the raise hand emoji or reaction. Sometimes that can be under the reactions, or sometimes that can be under the more. And that will keep you in order. You can hand off to the next person, or I can do that for you. So welcome, welcome, welcome. And now we will pause in awkward silence until we figure out what we want to talk about today.
No, I came in at the right time. New Orleans and witchy shit. Stevie Nicks is playing in New Orleans on the 28th of February. Somebody hurry up and win the lottery and let's buy tickets.
That sounds amazing. I didn't know she was playing in New Orleans.
Yeah, that's one day before I get there.
Really?
Yes.
Cool.
So missing out, but
What's the big like venue down there? Like, where's she playing at?
I think it's just the dome down there or
Okay.
whatever big venue. It's not any place cool like in old theaters or anything like that. And yeah, I don't think I don't know. I have a feeling that Renee's like me and she Googling that shit. She's on it. She's coming to St. Louis too, so for the spring Midwestern convergence, if anybody. Okay. Oh, I never read that.
Superdome.
Yeah.
is there so we know New Orleans and we know Salem. Do we know, and I guess Lilydale, New York, Cassadaga, Florida. Do we know any other like truly like witchy places in America to visit?
I mean, you just keeping within the US. I
Yeah,
mean, obviously there's your places
right.
in Europe that I don't
Right.
know, but lots
Yeah.
of obviously. Just
Right.
in the US.
Here,
Well,
Alton, across the river in Alton, there was a Civil War prison, so there's a lot of ghosty shit that happens over there.
And then there's Halloween Town, but I think that's very commercial, like in
Oh,
Oregon. Heather, have you been to their Halloween Town? Heather maybe has visited. I don't know.
oh,
Sometimes
I'd visit.
Heather. You've been to Halloween Town?
Oh no, I said I would visit for sure, you know.
Oh, me too. It's like I'm a little bit older than that. What was it? What was that show or the movies? Um,
Escape to Witch Mountain.
that was a good
I mean,
one.
that's my age bracket.
Okay,
There
hold on.
was
Gen
a
X.
there was a big series for Halloween Town, like multiple movies.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. The town, not the mountain.
Yes.
Yeah, was that what was it called? Halloween Town?
Yes, it
Night-
was called Halloween Town.
Oh,
I think they were Disney. I want to say they
Nightmare.
were Disney-ish. Now I'm gonna have to look it up.
Yes, I just said for those, I live about an hour from Salem, so if anyone ever wants to plan a trip and you want to hit me up, I will come in and meet you and I can give you as many tips and tricks as I know. And Renee had asked, like, is Salem really commercial? And it is. There is like it is commercial, but there is also a very rich history there. And for example, Madonna and I, a bunch of us had met up in Salem last spring, was it? Time, I'm not a, I think I don't, I'm realizing I'm not a very timeline individual, but that's why I post things on Facebook, to be honest, so I know when things happened. Otherwise, I don't know. I think it was last year, but a bunch of us met up. And Madonna and I, like on the way home, we went to they do have a memorial site for where some of the witches were hung and things like that. So like there are places that you can go to if you look up that's just outside of like the shopping area. But the shopping area, I mean, I love it. I think it's awesome. Um, and as the chat is blowing up. And welcome, Bridget. We're so happy that you joined us today. Um, what was your secret? Oh, was it Halloween Town or Salem? Um,
Posting things on Facebook so I would remember them.
oh, that, yeah.
I'm
Like,
terrible.
yeah, I know. I'm like, I really just use it as a like a timeline for myself.
Yeah, it's my date book diary. Mhm.
Exactly.
Yep.
Um, and then so they say the Hawthorne Hotel is haunted. I mean, really, aren't all hotels haunted? But that's is that just me? I mean, in a sense, right? I don't know. But people have there's rooms that people have said that they've experienced activity there. Yeah, there's just really old houses. There's a house there that's called the Witch House, and you can visit it. It's actually it's not, so it's actually one of the judges from the Salem witch trials lived there. So it's like I guess the last known house that was in for somebody that was involved in the witch trials. I love visiting the cemeteries there. Um, and there's a lot of like maritime history and things like that. Nathaniel Hawthorne and all those types of, if you're into all that, then it's a really cool place to visit. Boston is also, and other places around if you're into history and stuff.
usually when I go on vacation, these are my missions. I want to go to the museum, I want to go to the cemetery, and I want to eat good food. And those are like my three priorities when I'm
Hmm.
traveling.
You would love it.
Yeah.
And I know we have like some big Hocus Pocus fans in our community, and Hocus Pocus was filmed. There's a lot of scenes from the movie, or like houses, at least external, like the houses and the cemetery, and that there's a little tour you can do. One of the witches in our community, I know her daughter one day is gonna want to hit me up to go to do the Hocus Pocus. It's like kind of, I feel it's just like, it's cool, but it's just like, oh, there's the house. Okay. Like, but
Oh, hey, I've got a quick little thing if that's okay, a little shout out.
yeah, I'm just, you know,
Yeah, I figure like we're just kind of chatting. There's a shop in Chicago, I think called the Malloway Brothers, and it's Blake and Wick are the brothers that own the shop, and they also have um a book or a you know publishing house wing of it called Cross Crow Books. So I ordered a book from them, and it didn't show up for a while. So I just sent an email. I was like, hey, just checking back to see if this slipped through the cracks. And it, in fact, did slip through the cracks. And so I got like a really nice email back from Blake, and he's like, oh, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. And then when I got the book, he sent me another really nice limited edition book for free. Just because of like, you know what I mean? Like, I wasn't put out or angry or anything, but it was just like, anyway. So I think, I just wanted to give them a shout out because I follow them on Instagram too. And I mean, they look like they have a really vibrant, interesting, fun community. And, yeah, and obviously really good customer service. So I'm going to pause or mute.
That's so nice. I've been following, I don't know if anybody's in New York or in the Amityville area, but I've been following the Amityville Apothecary shop. I just started following them on TikTok, and they were like showing their store, and they have their bookshelves are color coordinated in like one section, and I'm like, oh, that's like a dream of mine to like, I don't even have that many books, but if I did, in in the house I'm manifesting in the giant library, there'll be color. I just think that looks so cool, like, like it's decor and like all of your amazing books. I would also just love to go on a tour of like libraries. I love libraries. I'm sure I'm not the only one, but I would love to like go on a tour. I told my boyfriend this spring. I'm like, the Boston Public Library is really cool. I'm like, I want to go hang out there. Like, why don't I go there? It's not that far away. But then there's so many other libraries that I want to visit.
Honestly, I'm intimidated by libraries, and but like I was thinking that, and then it made me think of how my guides in Julie Storm's workshop, uh the channeling workshop, had had shown me the Akashic records, and like they had taken me into this like really geometrically like shaped like or like all the shelves were in like a really like a what's it called, like a sacred geometry kind of looking shape, and they were just full of books, and we flew like through the books and then up and over it, and I could see the shape like as we went like up and up through the ceiling. But it feels like um I don't know why I feel the need to bring this up, but it feels like reading is intimidating, but yet still part of my path. And so I find libraries intimidating because I'm like, there are so many things that I haven't read because I didn't develop a practice of reading from a young age. Um, it was always something in school that was like, you have to do it. It's like I can read, and I proved all I felt the need to do was prove that I could read to the highest reading level of like the AR books. There was like the highest was like you could read a college textbook was like the equivalent or something like that, and I just wanted to prove that I could do that. And then as soon as I reached that level, I got kind of like, okay, well then what's the point now? And it really wasn't until we started doing the book club in the Witchy Way Cafe, like the literary lunch hour, um, that I realized that I don't dislike reading. I just find it intimidating because I don't have an established practice of doing that. I think that could be applied to like multiple things that I want to incorporate into my witchcraft. If anyone wants to riff off that, that is my complete thought. Thank you.
Thank you, Ocean. We have someone says they've been balancing nonfiction with fiction. I also do that too. I love like fiction that's mixed in with like historical like facts. Those are like my favorite. Something that's helped me is audio books, but I realized so I can read fiction, but not nonfiction in the audio. I just won't retain it. So there are certain books where I like need the letters, and there are others that I can't. I think one tip with books, for me was I do this thing where I need like if I have to do something, I need to block out like 16 hours, like, but because ADHD, like whatever, but like, so I feel like I need this big block of time. However, then it's also true that it's best if I do things in just small increments. And so like with reading a book, like literally just trying to read 20, if I have to actually read it, then it's like literally just set up to read the 10 pages and then know that, and then I can take a break. So it's like getting things in smaller increments rather than trying to even read a whole chapter or whatever has helped me, if I stick to that. Let's see, we got hands up. So I got my hands up. Okay, sorry. Participants. And Alicia.
Hello. I just had
Hello.
some fun little side notes on that. Does anyone else
Oh, you went on mute. There you go.
sorry, yeah, I saw that. Has anyone ever tried to read a book versus just opening the book and inhaling the book? Like, I don't know. So we had a tea party with my sisters the other day, a couple days ago, and we were talking about this one book that we had all read, and we were getting kind of like a book club, getting together and doing a tea party with it. And my sister hands me this book, and it's probably 300 pages or something. And I said, okay, I'll have that done tomorrow or whatever, and I'll hand it back to you. And like half my sisters are like, or my sister-in-law, it's not my sisters because we all just inhale books. They were like, oh, and I'm like, I'm not trying to make you feel bad, and I'm not. I just read fast. I just read quickly, but I can't sit there and read line by line. My brain won't let me. Like I have to either inhale it or if it's like nonfiction, like then I can read line by line sometimes if it's something really, but if it's really heavy, I have to take it really slow. But most like fiction books and things like that, I can just especially like the one that we did read, um that wasn't my favorite. And so I just kind of really fastly read it, but um quickly read it. Fastly isn't a word. But yeah, I don't know. I just wondered if anyone else did the same thing. Like, can you like make yourself read like the individual words and letters and have your brain not be screaming at you, or or do you inhale it? Because I inhale them.
Ocean.
By oh god, this is so nerd a version of me, but by inhale, do you mean you sit and read the book in like one sitting, or do you mean you just like sit with it in a sensory sense?
It's really hard to describe. So um, I start off like I open the first page, and I can open a book up, and the first probably page that I'm reading, I'm aware that I'm reading. And then after that, it's like it's all in my head. Like I cannot tell you the specific. I'm like I know where the words are at. Like if I needed to go back to the place, like I can photograph it in my head and like I know where it was at. But I'm not aware that I'm reading. I don't know if that makes any sense. It's like it's kind of like all Claire. What's the visual one? Yeah, the only word that's popping in my head is clairaudient today. The visual Claire. That's what I'm using. It's like I'm watching a movie. So when someone says they stare at dead trees and hallucinate, it makes me laugh because that's kind of what I feel like I'm doing, you know. but I know there are some people who actually like read word by word, you know, like line by line kind of thing. And for me, I start off that way, and then it's like within 30 seconds or so, I'm like, it's just like watching a movie in my head. So that's what I mean by inhaling it. And so I'm reading at like a steady stream to keep like the movie reel going. I don't know if that makes any sense, but yeah.
Yes, it does. Are you also good at guessing the endings of movies?
We have to watch the really hard detective shows, my husband and I, because we're both like, okay, we have peg that, peg that, peg that, peg that.
That's,
If it's too,
that's definitely a witchy thing. I
Yeah.
I was gonna weigh in that I realized as you both were talking that the belief was that I have to learn by reading. I have to do something that I enjoy, that I don't enjoy, which is not the reality that I actually want to like be participating in. And I was feeling really helpless and lost in what to do to support the Palestinian people who are going through a genocide. And it occurred to me, why don't I just educate myself on what's going on, like, and why it's going on? Because if I'm going to be a witch about it, then I need all the information that I can possibly get. And it's like I recognize that knowledge and learning and education is such a huge component of witchcraft and of um being self-aware. um but it's really hard to let it be easy. It's really hard to remember that there's like so much information that people have like already studied and already had like um the time and energy to make like a YouTube video on or whatnot. And there's just something really important about letting it be easy. Okay, I'm gonna pass off the mic. I think Renee is next.
I was gonna weigh in on what Alicia said, and I was just curious if I've been reading lately about how people will kind of involuntarily enter a trance state. And it almost sounds like Alicia is like entering a trance state when she reads. Um, because a lot of times with art, like when you're working on art, my family used to call it the craft trance as a joke. But then I was reading something the other day and they were talking about how there's all kinds of activities where you'll just kind of slip into a trance. And it almost, I don't know, Alicia, sounds like that, like you know, because you're retaining the information and you have the movie and everything, but you're not consciously reading like I'm reading. The words are going in my head, you know, so it almost sounds like trance-like to me, which I'm trying to like identify all the cool ways you can just slip into a trance without trying. So anyway, I'm gonna mute.
can I reply to that? Or does someone else have a hand up? Okay. No, that I never thought about that, but that's exactly what it feels like. That's why it's so hard to describe. I'm like, I don't know how else to describe it, but yeah, it's like I'm here, but I'm not here. And it feels like now that I know what the clairs are, it feels like I'm using the clairvoyance, which is yeah. But yeah, there's a lot of things that I realized that I have been doing in odd ways that I didn't realize were odd, like channeling. I think I've channeled my entire life, but kind of slipping into like a trance state and not knowing it. But I've just done it since I was little and didn't realize that's what I was doing and what I continued to do, just in a slightly different way as I got older. But yeah, I never thought about that as a trance. That is super cool because yeah, that would be exactly what that is. Yeah, you're there for like 30 seconds just to get like in the zone and then you're gone. Yeah, very cool. Thanks.
Oh, I love these conversations because they're just so cool and it reminds me of like when we talk too about our giftings, and like when we're talking about this, like how we all read books or how we watch movies, and that um when you do something one way, or at least I do this, like I just think, oh, like that's how you do it, but it's not. Like, you know, so how everybody like processes information or reads, or like when we talk about, you know, like all the Claires and stuff like that, we really do all interact with it like in our way. And I just think that's really cool. And I love talking about that. Like I love when like that happens, like someone says like you see images in your brain, and like someone else is like no, and someone else is like yes, like I see a whole movie, and someone's like well I hear it this way. Like I think that's so cool. um I don't, Alicia, don't think that I go into the, quite like what you were explaining, but I skim, and then sometimes and for some reason I'm able to like pick it up, but I do skim so much that I do sometimes I do then stop and try to go back and like actually read the whole thing. But I think that's just, you know, so it's just that's like different, but that's what I do. And that's why I struggle um with books that don't, that especially if I'm not interested, right? Because then there's like the hyper focus part that I can get into when something's really grabbed my attention and I want to like, you know, immerse myself into that. But if it's something that like, okay, I'm like maybe reading this for a book club and I want to be able to participate, I'll find myself like skimming. But when that's more for me knowing like, okay, like you're maybe not that into it, or maybe your brain, maybe you just need to come back to it another time. But I think that's super cool. And I don't know if I've ever heard anyone explain it quite like that, but I bet you're not the only one. I bet like there's, you know, and then what Ocean was saying about like there's probably already someone that has like summarized this book, which I also love because I'm always like, if someone's already done it, like let's not reinvent the wheel. But the one thing I just wanted to it kind of pinged for me is always to you know, as we're like, you know, part of kind of this process is like discernment and, you know, always considering the perspective, whoever's written it, like that they're coming, even though some people I maybe do a better job of trying to present just like sheer facts, but I mean, isn't it always from someone's perspective, right? Like if you weren't there witnessing it, or if you were, then it's your perspective. But it's like there's always someone's perspective. So just to be like kind of aware of that when we're taking any information from anybody. And let's see whose hand is next. And I just have to step away for a moment because my work phone was ringing. So I will be right back. And I think that, let me just check. Sometimes I don't see the hands properly. Renee.
I just had a quick little uh mention from what Maria said, which was when you kind of think everybody is experiencing the world the same way that you experience it. And I know at least one other person here has synesthesia, which is like when your senses are crossed a little bit. And so you'll like hear colors and like taste colors. And well, for me, it's a lot of color stuff, but I thought everybody had that. And it wasn't until I think I was in my 20s that I found out everybody didn't have that. But again, that's one of the things when you're a little kid and you're like, this tastes like blue, you know, and people look at you weird. But anyway, that was just my um, little add in on that. So I'll mute again.
I'll pop in
Okay.
for.
Oh, yep.
Oh,
Yeah.
I was just gonna say, now I'm really curious. How many people on here actually see images like when they're reading a book? Does anybody else on here do that? You do, Renee? Yeah. Huh. Okay.
Total movie, also full on movie. I can replay it in my head later.
Yeah. Yeah. Petra, Jenny. Okay. Yeah. Lucy, is that Lacey? Lacey. Okay. Nice. Okay. Yeah. I was just going, maybe I'm a lot I thought more people did see pictures and like movie reels in their head. So yeah. And then yeah, it's just been recently that I found out that not everybody has a voice in their head that walks them through or tells them things and whatnot. Yeah, Petra, I'm like you. It's probably do with the trance thing too. Yeah, 100 pages an hour, no sweat. So I knew I was weird when the Lord of the Rings movie came out, and when it hit the theaters, and I went and saw it like 17 times in the theaters, right? But the first one came out, I read The Hobbit growing up, and I knew The Hobbit, and I was familiar with that, but I hadn't read Lord of the Rings. So when the movie came out, I was just like, oh, this is cool, I love it. We went and saw it. But the way it ended right there on that cliffhanger, with Gandalf dying and all that stuff, and I was like, no, what? I have to know what happens. So I went home, picked up the trilogy, and within 3 days, I'd read the entire trilogy. And then I was okay because I knew what happened, right? And what's hyper? Oh yeah, yeah, something similar to that, I think. Maybe if Petra, if you can hop on and explain that because that sounds fascinating. But yeah, anyway, I'll let you guys chat.
I believe I am next. I wanted to touch on synesthesia that Renee brought up because I love talking about it. It is, and I love hearing about other people's experience of it too. There's like different types, and I feel like I experience both being able to I experience a lot of crossover. Like I associate flavors and textures with words and names. Even at times I associate with colors and I also struggle with, okay, there's something called mirror touch synesthesia that I have always struggled with. Like, maybe I'm just an empathetic person, or maybe it's just something that I'm doing to myself in my own brain. But the idea is that whenever you see somebody getting like physically hurt, you like react as if you are being harmed in that way. Like, it's hard for me to watch horror movies because of it, or to play like games with that sort of thing. There's a really morally heavy game called Heavy Rain that at one point the character that you're playing has to cut off their own finger, and it's a really morally taxing game. Like, I would not recommend it if it's not like teenage me was like just such a sad person. But I was like really into like Silent Hill and stuff, and it's like I just wanted to explore all the like psychological places in the world. And I think that with synesthesia, it's experiencing things in a way that is connective to like all parts of the system. I had a boss one time. I used to work at a horse rescue, and I had a boss who told me that I needed to learn to compartmentalize better. But I kind of realized that that was like, you need to like dampen your sensory like experience, or you need to like not feel things that you're feeling, is kind of like how I've been interpreting it. Like, I know that compartmentalization helps a lot of people who deal in like difficult like fields of like work and stuff like that. But when you're telling that to like a 20-year-old person, who is still learning about their sensory experience, because like, I mean, some of us still don't. I'm almost 30 and I don't fully understand my sensory experience. But the more that I learn about it, the more that I feel like synesthesia is such a really great way to describe my experience. It also goes into my aura art. I I love experiencing people and just learning about them and like saying like how do you feel about this color? How do you feel about this like flavor? Like what does this, mean to you? And getting to just the colors, and I never expect it. If I were to just say I'm gonna paint your aura without ever talking to somebody like about the process, it would never turn out how their aura actually is, because it's not just as seen. The more that I get to know people, the more that I'm able to talk to them, the more that it's like they're showing me their light. They feel safe being lit up around me. I don't know who's next. That's apparently the end of my thought, because period, end of sentence. I think, DePetra, did you want to weigh in on your experience?
Sure. I just need to. There was somebody asked me, and then I was like, yes, I can do that. I was really tired this morning. What was, Alicia, you had a question or something, right? What was it? Can you just refresh my memory?
It was something about your you were talking about the reading a lot, and you used something about 4K.
Oh, hyperventilation.
Yeah. So what is that exactly?
Yeah,
You
about this. So basically, like, Fantasia is the Latin way to like describe our mind's eye. So there's people who have aphantasia, so they have no mind's eye, like they don't see when they close their eyeballs, nothing. When they read a book, nothing. I have a friend from med school it's like that for her, and I'm just like, what the hell did you study? What? I'm so confused because my mind is on the other, it's a spectrum. Like I'm on the other side of the spectrum, but like very much so, like incredibly vivid, incredibly vivid internal like visual experience, all of it, like how to explain it to people, like even when I would like be like remembering paperwork, like for work, when I would be like at the end of the day being like, what do I have to do my notes for this patient, I'm like, what did I do? I would like orient myself to some visual cue that I was looking at the time. And I literally would like close my eyes and be like, I would teleport back to the time, and I could just hear them talking and see what I was seeing, even with my eyes closed, and being like, okay, okay, I need to put these things in the chart. Which is like, I don't think how most people experience memory. Like, I think that's kind of unusual. It's not unusual for me. It's like how I've always done it. Very effective in tests. I kind of like was like, I have the memory of the lecture notes in my head. I just have to like get to the right slide in my notes to remember exactly what was said for this question or whatever. So that's kind of like hyperventilation is like very rich, and then aphantasia is none, and then there's like varying scales in between. And it's also, I don't remember what the word is for the internal narrator, but some of it is associated where it's a little bit different, because like the visual experience of our memories is kind of more to do with like imagination, but just visual imagination, because I don't think that people who have aphantasia don't have imagination. Like I'm like, they just experience it differently. And like I, as someone who has hyperphantasia, I have no idea what that's like. I'm like, I would love to hear. I'm just like so relentlessly curious about that. I'm like, oh my God, how do you like read books about stories? Like, how does this happen for you? Is it just like lists of fact? Like I kind of tried to quiz my friend Sam on it once, and she was like, I don't know, it just does. And she was like, you're really intense about this. And I'm like, because it's so cool. Um, and she's a Taurus, so she's like, what is going on? I'm just a chill little earth sign over here. And you're being really like hardcore about this, my water sign friend. But yeah, and then I love all of this like neuroscience stuff. I think it's so fascinating. Like even with like what Ocean was talking about with like synesthesia, like there are different kinds of synesthesia. Like there are people who have like color synesthesia or like texture synesthesia or all these different things. And it's just I don't want to say a fluke, but it essentially means that like like more than one sensory pathway gets lit up by the same stimulus. So it's like that's why like people are like, I can taste colors. It's like you're seeing the color and then your gustatory senses are also being activated, or whatnot. I do experience some synesthesia. I don't honestly think about it that hard because some of it's just like, I'm like, I don't know, it's just real fancy and weird in here. Like we're just doing our own thing and everything is random. But like, and I don't say weird in a bad way. I actually love like the old timey like WYRD, like the origin of the root origin of the word weird, which means like fate. It's kind of like fated, or like it's more of like a kind of I don't know what I would say, like witchy maybe way of like looking at the word. Because I've always really identified with it, and I was like, this is usually negative. Why don't I feel like this about this? And then I learned about the origin of the word, and I was like, that's probably why. Did that answer your question, or do you have more questions? Because I will just ramble around this forever.
I just threw in the chat real quick, but is the weird related to the dragon version of the weird, the wired, or whatever that word term is? Is that related?
Yeah, because I mean, I think that's the thing with like Old English and Germanic languages, because they have Latin roots. So there's all these like commonality, like offshoot words. When you have those sets of words. I also love linguistics. Like, so like it's so good. Yeah, weird sisters. But yeah, there's tests that you can take online. Like if you look, I don't know if there's a hyperphantasia test, but there's aphantasia tests. So you can kind of like, they'll be like, imagine an apple in your mind's eye. Like, what do you see? And then they'll like be things that you can be like, I see nothingness. I see the outline of an apple. Whereas like for me, when I'm like, imagine an apple in my mind's eye, like if I just close my eyes and did it right, I can even do it with my eyes open, where it's like I can see a fresh apple, I can smell it, I can feel what the texture is like. All of the sensory information is there. Like it's like it feels the same in my body as if I was picking up and doing it in real life. And I don't think that is everyone's hyper fantastic like fantasia experience. Like I think that there's some like extra layers and maybe some of that synesthesia stuff where it's like I get all the other like the smell and the texture and like all of those pieces as well as the visual information. But yeah, thanks for asking. I'm gonna I don't know who's next. Renee, and I'm gonna just be listening from my pocket because I need to go get my dog from outside because she's decided to bark at the door.
I was gonna say, as someone who also has the movies in their head, I can speak to, I think we've kind of discussed this before, like there is a danger of maladaptive daydreaming, because when you can see the movies in your head, it's really easy to spend time there instead of in the real world. But the other thing I was going to say is I have really intense visual, I just always call it my visual imagination. And then when I started on a medication, it completely shut it down for like 2 weeks. And to go from having like the rich interior imaginative visual life to having like the aphantasia where I could call up nothing, it honestly felt like I had like a major limb amputated or something. Like it was the worst feeling. But yeah, so it's really weird because I've experienced that, but also during COVID, I lost my sense of taste, which again is one of those things where you go from, you know, being a foodie to not being able to taste anything, and losing a sense is so intense and crazy and terrible that yeah, it's not a good time. I'm gonna mute me.
I'm gonna pop in here and just say this is what happens when Jen Marie leaves us. We don't sit in our feelings as much as we go, let's do science. Let's learn something. All of us like nerdy people are like, hey, how does this work?
Yeah, that reminds me. I mean, does anybody else like, I'm not just fascinated by any kind of weird brain things, but I'm also fascinated by any kind of, you know, like physical uh things, you know, like I'm interested in any kind of like conditions, I guess. Like maybe if you have conditions, you're just like, oh, they're my people, like, you know. But yeah, like I love any kind of, you know, I don't even, sorry, I'm just that, like, I'm gonna mute.
You're so awesome, Renee. I'm so glad you're here. I can also speak on seeing like movies in my head and maladaptive daydreaming. And I feel like the more that I think about maladaptive daydreaming, the more that it feels like it's uh it's only maladaptive if you're viewing things through a capitalistic lens. It could be seen as a space to as a magical space in my body, like or in my mind. I don't know if that, ooh, that's a whole other question. Is the space that I go to in my mind within my body? Um, but I when I joined Bright and Dark, I used to try not to space out because I'm prone to daydreaming. But upon the suggestions of my cousins, I was like, okay, maybe I'll just let myself, the next time I space out, relax into it. And I found that I was going places across time and different, it felt like different versions of me. I could not possibly say if it was past lives, but that's what it felt like. But I have no proof of any of this, but I I remember one very vividly, that I was in like ancient Greece is what it felt like, and I was like painting pots, like painting like ceramic or clay pots. I don't remember what they, I think they were ceramics, like early type of ceramics, but I was just painting them. I wasn't making them. And I just remember feeling so stressed out because, like, while I was painting, I was like, if I don't paint enough pots, if I don't sell enough of these painted pots, then I won't be able to feed my family, was like just the main thought in my head. And I felt like I was the provider for this family, you know, that I supposedly had. And it felt so real. And when I came back, I was just on, like, my partner and I were like driving to the beach, I think, or something. Like I had some time to space out, so it like wasn't a big deal or anything. And I told my partner, I was like, hey, I'm just gonna let myself space out. So if you see me spacing out, just let me be. And he's like, okay, cool. So the more that I dip into that, the more that I'm like exploring like the feelings of it, especially like that. That's just so interesting to me that I was stressed out about a problem that doesn't necessarily exist in my life in this world. And that's what made me feel like it was either in another time or in another dimension. lots of hands. Go ahead, Ezra.
Yeah, I really like this conversation too. I really love neuroscience, and like psychology. And I remember one of my earliest memories is like reading my mom's psychology textbook, like just pulling that off the shelf, um and so like later when I started to get more into the science of it, that was like I was like, oh, this is like another lens that to see all of this through. And then, of course, when I was, deconstructing all of that and looking at it magically, that was like a whole nother thing to be like, oh, those most of the like people, almost all of them, I would say, like that wrote these books, like have no magical perspective on any of this stuff. And so when I was thinking about um like aphantasia, like they whatchamacallit, like people that experience like no, it's so interesting. I think it's like very related to giftings, like people that experience no picture whatsoever. There have been like studies done, and that like they have a more accurate memory about things, like it, because like essentially when we remember things, we remember the last time we remembered it, not the first time we remembered it. And so the more you remember it, like the more your mind edits things. Um, and we all have our own biases, so that can just happen. But people that aren't imagining it and like putting, I guess, all that energy into the picture of it, they actually like remember the facts a little bit more clearly, which is it's so interesting because I like delved into that because when I first found out what it was, my ex and I, like, we watched a video about it, and then at the end of it, we both looked at each other, and I was just like, oh, that doesn't exist, right? And she said, oh, like no one actually sees things in their brain, right? Like that's not real. So like from the other end of the spectrum, like neither of us like could believe that was something, like that was somebody else's experience at first. um I also really liked what Ocean said about maladaptive daydreaming, because I feel like even just putting mal in front of it is like such a judgy thing. Like if anything, it's just adaptive daydreaming. Like your reality here on Earth sucked in some way, and so you decided to go somewhere else. Like, regardless of if you believe that that's purely imagination or some kind of astral place, like that's what you did. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. So, other than, the people that like might miss you a little bit, you're not being as present. So I'm sure like in some ways that might affect your magic depending on what you're doing. Like I think the only like um bad thing really um is kind of just our present standards of what someone's supposed to be doing at any given time. Um, and I think that like there would probably be a lot more leeway for people like, in a magically informed world for people to go off on mind adventures. um, and let's see. And in that same world, like they wouldn't have so much of an incentive to just stay gone forever, because this world would not be as painful in order for that to happen. um I was really fascinated, like I also have like, I would consider it hyperphantasia, but I don't think I experience it quite like Petra. um Although it does, like, it's all my senses like do show up, um but it's usually a little bit more heavy on the visual and hearing, which are, you know more more in line with my clairs than like smell and taste. And yeah, I think I caught up with everything I was gonna say while everyone was talking. I know Petra had a weigh-in. Yeah. Go ahead, Petra.
I think it was just about the maladaptive daydreaming piece and just kind of like something I want to say. Oh yeah, because I was taking tea outside when that happened. I was like, what was I doing so I can remember what happened in my brain, because I'm very tired today. See, I like used the visual prompt to be like, there was a thing that happened. There it is. Is that I think sometimes too, it's hard, depending on what clairs are coming up for you, to figure out the difference between those and maladaptive daydreaming sometimes. I know that for me, I get premonitions, like fully formed memories that are just like boom, and I'm like, cool, what the fuck was that? When I was more dysregulated, they used to be about scary things, like people dying or my dog dying, and like that was incredibly terrifying. And then I set a boundary with my guides when I kind of stopped that medication and woke up in my life and was like, no more of this. Like, if I can't change it, I don't want to know, because like I don't need a heads up on all the people around me that are good, whatever. I was having immensely intrusive thoughts about like literally everything and anything that was terrible or terrifying that could happen was just like, boom, visual, like imagine this, imagine that. It was like, so there are ways I think sometimes where like, if our nervous systems are really dysregulated and we're in really high survival stress, that like these things can manifest in ways that are really terrifying. I'm going to be honest. Because I remember telling people about how my brain worked and they were like, that's great. I'm like, yeah, until these things happen. Like there's a balance. Like it's not, everything has another side, is kind of just what I'm trying to say. So I think that's always important to remember, is like there's a strength of some things, and then like there's ways in which that can not be a weakness but can also be very challenging. So I think that's also why like it's so neat that we're all very different, because then it's like we all get to experience different challenges and different things. But yes, kind of differentiating for me between like, okay, I'm daydreaming because I started thinking about something, versus I just had this fully formed memory out of completely nowhere, just like drop in my lap. Like I wasn't daydreaming, I wasn't whatevering. It's almost like I'll get a stimulus, like I'll meet someone, and then I have this memory of like us in the future of something that's happening. And I'm just like, this is intense. Like, it's just like, I also kind of set some boundaries around that. I'm like, I don't need to know these things. Like, this is not, it's making me actually quite anxious. Thank you. Like, and I think that that's also an important piece to talk about with any type of gifting, is like, your body best and what your capacity is. Your guides will always, I think, try to be like, come on, you can go faster. Not in a mean way, but in a like, they're not embodied, they don't experience terror like you do, or like, or anger or fear. Like it's not, they don't have a meat suit being like, here are all the like endorphins or all of the catecholamines and the adrenaline and all of those things. So it's like, I think it's just, there's a disconnect sometimes between like, I don't actually have the physical capacity to do this thing yet. I'm so great that you believe in me. I'm not actually there yet, because it's making me very dysregulated and I haven't been sleeping well. So like, I need to set some boundaries around this for myself to be like, hey, actually. But there's also like the pieces where like, I don't know, you like have a new friend or a new something and your brain is like, I want to make up all these stories about this and this is fun. Because like it gives us dopamine too. I think that that's an important thing to remember. And sometimes too, like maladaptive daydreaming, like when Ocean was talking, I was like, to me this sounds like a past life. Like I don't know if that's your experience, Ocean, at all, like if that resonates. If it doesn't, like totally makes sense. I just like it was so, I was like listening, I'm like, this is interesting because it sounds like a fully embodied experience. And so it was just kind of super neat. And then the other piece that I wanted to share was that there is research that says like experiences of non-ordinary reality, which is like meditation, like journeying, or like vision stuff, like where you're like, I'm gonna go to another place, like astral stuff, that those things can actually be beneficial for people who have PTSD. And helpful is that like, it's almost sometimes I wonder why we're, I mean, there's many reasons why under the current paradigm that we're really mentally unwell. But I think that some of that is part of that is that like we've lost these skills that were a part of ritual in humankind for like, I don't know, since the beginning of it. Like we all, you hear about so many cultures having like, at this age, someone went into the woods and they did whatever, and they took this drink and they did a vision quest and they fasted and they whatever, like having these immensely potent and powerful spiritual experiences that involved not the physical world, like about being someplace else. And I think sometimes I wonder if like the dissociation is not just in that we experience, because some of this stuff, like if you want to be like, what is this, it like technically is under the umbrella of dissociation because it's like not being in your body. But some of it, I wonder if like we all kind of like, not just because of chronic pain, just not because of chronic stress, not just as a protective thing, but sometimes I wonder if our brains are trying to like help us get back there, like help us get to a place where we can like have an experience and like process and metabolize the stuff so that we can kind of meet these like, I don't want to say milestones, but these things that would have happened in cultures for like millennia before it became like uncool because of politics and capitalism and industrialism and imperialism, like all these different things. These are just thoughts that I have sometimes where I'm like, I wonder, because I also just don't like the idea of like that dissociation gets a bad rap in kind of trauma communities, and I don't love that because I think that like it's an incredibly intelligent and compassionate way for our bodies to protect us when whatever's happening is too much. And I'm like, we all walk around in these things. I know that like capitalism loves to make us feel crappy about our bodies because they don't like look a certain way or move a certain way or do or whatever, but like I look at the body as like an incredibly advanced piece of machinery. Like this there's millennia of evolutionary change that lives inside of my cells, like that I carry like hundreds of thousands of years of like that just in me that got me to this point. It might not be super convenient that I have a panic attack because something was scary or because I got triggered, but also the modern world isn't set up for me to be a person. So like there's kind of, like I'm sure if we were in like more egalitarian societies, like someone getting startled and crying in the woods, it was not a big deal. Like it was like, whatever, who, nobody cares. Like you're hanging out with sheep, the sheep don't care. Like it's fine. But like when you're at a desk in a cubicle and there's like overhead lights and everything is overstimulated because you live in a gray box and travel in a gray box to work, and then like, I think that there's just these elements of stuff where I'm like, the context helps me feel like more compassionate and also more like grateful because my body's just trying to like, this is how it helps me think about it, but like my body is an animal, like, and like I wouldn't yell at a dog or a cat or a cow or whatever for being like, fluorescent lights are too much and I'm scared, so it's like one of those things where it's like, can I have that same compassion and understanding for myself because I too am still an animal, even though I have a big frontal lobe that likes to convince me that I'm not. Like, so I don't know where that all came from, but I'm gonna pass on to whoever's next. I don't know who. Renee, I think, or was it Jenny? I can't remember. I can't tell. somebody.
Renee, did you want to go? Okay. So talking about past lives, I've always been super, super interested in that. But I've never really delved into it. It's just been one of those, every time it comes up, I want to really listen. But my youngest son, from the time he was old enough to talk, has been talking about his other dad and his other family when they lived in Africa. And he can describe it like, he can describe the house that they lived in, and he can describe what was around it, and he can describe things that they did. And he's been able to do this since he was like 2 or 3. So like long before he would have had been exposed to that type of, environment. The house that he describes is an 1800s estate home of like an English officer in occupied Africa. And the village he describes is very similar to, something like that. And he, as he's gotten older, he's now 13. As he's gotten older, he's become more likely to think of it as a dream that he remembers really vividly, rather than actual events as how it started. His description started as, these are actual events, and please believe me. Now it's more of a dream. And I think it's just, the older he gets, the more he forgets. For me, I have been, since literally as long as I can remember, I have felt split between eras. I've felt split between the 60s and 70s as an era, and then like the 1600s, Shakespeare's era. I have felt my, not so much my body, but my understanding of the world and my understanding of how things are to be done and things like that. And like, I was obsessed as an 8-year-old. I was absolutely obsessed with Shakespeare. I had a huge, thick paperback book of the tragedies, and I would carry it with me everywhere and read it. And my teachers were like, "This is crazy. Why is this 8-year-old reading Shakespeare and understanding it?" But I've always done that. And then I'm always drawn to things that happened in the 60s and 70s. And I've always been drawn to that. And I was born in 74. So that's not a huge jump, but still, it's things that I shouldn't have been exposed to. I shouldn't have like real time memory, or real time, I guess, almost like deja vu. Um, when you read something about that time and you feel like, oh wait, I think I've experienced this. That seems familiar for some weird reason. So I fully believe that the daydreaming that I do and the stories that my brain tells itself and I get so obsessed with, and I just kind of fall into them, kind of like Ocean was talking about. You start that daydream, and my mom used to call them my day stories, and you fall into that hole, and it becomes everything that is happening to you right then. It becomes so real. And I think that is paired with this past life type experience. I think that's how you get some of that information as you get older. You kind of fall into this daydream area, and it allows your brain to let you in on those secrets that it wouldn't normally. But yeah, I'd really like to do some more exploring on past lives and kind of figuring that stuff out, because the way Mason talks about his other family in Africa, and he was so just precise, and he knew how he died, and he knew how his dad died. My dad died protecting me from a lion, and I ran, and I did not make it back to the house. And he could tell that story exactly the way it happened, from the time he was 3 until probably the time he was 9 or 10. That story never altered. So yeah, I mean, you can fall into that knowing what happened to you without realizing it, without researching it. I don't think we pay attention to it as much as we should. And the, like, putting Mao in front of a word makes you feel like you shouldn't do it. But yeah, I totally believe that you should. I definitely believe that if you have those intense daydreams, that you should definitely follow them, and you should definitely explore them and figure out where they're leading you, because there's a reason. They wouldn't be so intense if there wasn't a reason for them. That's all I have. Renee, I think you're next.
I just wanted to let everyone know some advice that I got from actually the person I'm visiting in New Orleans coming up. I was going to Europe when I was 18, and she told me, when you're there, like, don't be surprised and overwhelmed if something feels really familiar. And so I try to kind of keep that in mind when I travel. But then I also wanted to mention, I don't know if anybody here are like to read science fiction and fantasy books, but there's an author, Philip K. Dick. He's really famous. I mean, I think almost everything he's done has been made into a movie now, like Blade Runner from one of his short stories. But he has a trilogy of books called the Valis trilogy. And in them, he actually uses his own personal experience of having one of his past lives in ancient Greece, like, projected over his everyday life. And he does a really good job of explaining it. It's super fascinating. And like, he'll look in the mirror and he'll see other people, and he just starts seeing symbols, places. And anyway, Philip K. Dick. And I think that one is I think that is Valis in that book that he does that. But anyway, if anybody is interested in some good sci-fi reading, and that's all. I'm not sure. I can't see if anybody has their hand raised or anybody's next, but
Oh, were you going to go, Jenny? Oh, I was just going to comment on what Samantha was saying. So if someone else wanted to do something, I just thought that was fascinating. So go ahead, Petra. Did you want to say something?
Mine can wait too. So it's like, if you want to say whatever you, okay. I just wanted to say, like what Renee was talking about, there's actually like a word for it. It's called blood memory. And it's why, like, I find the intersection of like spirituality and like epigenetics, and like why I think ancestor work with like your direct genetic ancestors is really important, not just like spirit team and guides, and which like I think is also important, but I think there can be really cool stuff that can come, especially in terms of like healing like trauma in lineages, when working with like your genetic ancestors, because like all of their DNA just like lives in your body. So it's just like there. Like it's not like you're like, I need a specific, I mean, it's nice to have like, I have my grandma's brooch and I have my great grandfather's like watch and what, like that stuff's nice, but you literally carry parts of them inside of you. So like they're there, they're just hanging out. But I love the epigenetic piece. There's an amazing book from, what's his name? Mark Wallen, called It Didn't Start With You. And it kind of speaks to like this like very interesting phenomenon of people like experiencing trauma and having it expressed from like other people in their lineages. And to me, I think that like blood memory and that experience of like going to a place and kind of being like this, not just the, it's like it's almost akin to deja vu. And when I traveled in Ireland and Scotland and England in 2010, I was like definitely like not really checked into this stuff. I was still like very full on into Christianity and kind of just like didn't really understand. But there was, when I go back on memories of that time, I can feel like the echoes that I was like not paying attention to. That I was like, oh, like I just thought that the place was really pretty, or I had like this really intense like draw to it. And I was just like, oh, it's just like so gorgeous, like whatever. But there were definitely places where I would experience like, I would say almost like the veil being thin, like where I was like, I could hear things, I could like, and I thought it was just obviously because I didn't know. I was like, it's my imagination. I'm just like being really imaginative. Like that's been like what it's been like written off as my entire life. It's like, you just like really love stories. And I'm like, do I like stories, or am I like remembering what's happened in this place before? Because that's happened to me like for my whole life since I was a kid. Like I remember even in like in where I grew up in Saskatchewan, there's like all these forts like where like the Métis Rebellion fights were fought and things like that. And I remember going to one of them when I was a kid and like standing on the battlements and like looking out and like full on, I was like 6 years old, having images of like horses and like people. Like I saw it. It's like I teleported. And I just was like, I mean, I was 6. I don't think of anything of it. And like when I would remember later, I was just like, vivid imagination. And I'm like, I don't think that's how that works. Like, it's definitely something else. But the blood memory piece is so intense for me now. Like since I started doing ancestor work with my like Celtic ancestors, when I started like being like, okay, like deconstructed from Christianity, and now I need to go back to when the people in my bloodline were indigenous, like before Christianity. That's what I need. And I started like at the Samhain in 2021. Ever since then, when I see videos of like Scotland and Ireland and the countryside, I like burst into tears. And it's like this, like, I don't know how to describe it. It almost feels this akin to grief, but it feels more like homesickness. And it's like deep. Like it's like the kind of homesickness where you're like, I feel this in my bones. And I was talking to a friend who's indigenous about it, and they were like, yeah, like there's this term that anthropologists use for that, and it's called blood memory. And I was like, that's what it is. Because like I like looked for a word for it, and there's like some Swedish words or things like, but they're all about places that you've already been. Like longing to go back to this time or longing to, and I'm like, no, like some of these places I've lived, like never seen in my entire life. Like I didn't see them when I was over there. I've never been there, like physically. Like I don't know what that, but I know that like there's a part of me that's just like just aches for it. It's wild. So I wanted to share that because I think that it's so neat, like the ways in which the more we connect spiritually with ourselves, with our ancestry, with all of these things, the ways in which we are like more connected to different parts and places in the world that like we may never go, but like part of us or our DNA has been there before, and it remembers what it was like to be there. And so I just think that that's super nifty, and I wanted to share this. Okay, that's all. Ta-da! I think it's Ezra next, or maybe it's Alicia. I don't know. You guys rock, paper, scissors for it.
Yeah, I really love like when I studied epigenetics, like pretty much neuroscience immediately like led me there. And it's so fascinating. Like one of the ways that I think about it, and I often have like kind of a vision of it whenever I'm thinking about like, my relationship to my mom and my grandma, and like, you know how there is a timeline, like I picture it like a timeline, and then each of the, and that's like the long horizontal one, and then each of the little vertical ones is like a person instead, like the little tick. But you are the whole horizontal line. You think you're just the vertical line. But so if you think of it that way, it makes sense. Like I was actually going to lead into what Samantha was talking about with like quantum healing. It makes sense that there may be some things in your on your healing journey, like that you like it doesn't make as much sense to focus on the you that you are right now. It may make more sense to focus on further down the timeline. And since, you know, to the universe, like to us, that line is, you know, it's linear. So like it's like experiencing time. And so it feels like that happened a long time ago. But to the universe, it's happening all at the same time. And so that's, I think, when like where you get, you know, things that bleed over, because it's really happening. It's not that you're really remembering the past. It's kind of like that you are maybe matching the same like vibrational frequency as who you were before. I think, like, because the past only exists to us. Like that is the way we make sense of the world, is that there's past, present, and future. But anyway, that's just how, like, when I visualize that timeline and when I'm trying to make non-linear time make sense to me, that's how I picture it. Like, is like that, like my mother and my grandmother, and it's like they're also on that line, and that we can't really see the string that like attaches us all, but that we are essentially the same being. And that, and everybody that's close to you, or like even people that aren't blood related to you, I think, like if you ever met somebody that feels like they're like you've known them for a long time, I think it makes sense that, you know, you probably at some point knew them in the past, like possibly even like your line converged with theirs at some point before it split off into other, you know, versions of yourself. But that's what it makes sense to me, quantum healing wise, is that because rather than it feeling removed from you, feeling removed from all of your ancestors, which is something that I think like colonialism does on purpose, it brings all of those back into clarity. At least I imagine so. Like I actually don't have much experience with past lives specifically, but I do have like vivid dreams um of just like other people. Like I'm from perfectly from their perspective, but I know I'm not me. I can tell even if I'm looking at everything in first person in my dream, um, that I'm not the person that I'm not that I am right now. I'm somebody else. And um I think it's interesting to what that means for, you know, like parallel realities, or like the future of yourself. Like if it's not linear, like how much are you seeing that's like a future version of you, you know? So that's always really fun for me to think about. So thank you, Samantha, for bringing that up in the chat. Um, I know Ocean has their hand up. Okay, yep, Ocean.
I do, thank you. Um, so I wanted to talk about my perspective of home, or like being homesick, as somebody who's had to do a lot of deep shadow work on what home means. Um, I, in my search for home, I have thought about ancestral lands and stuff, and I do have emotions that come up when I see certain aesthetics or certain places. Um, I I feel like a home, let's see, there's a lot of thoughts that are connected to this. So I feel like home is within me, is what I want to start off saying. And that I believe that my ancestors who chose to live and continue their line rather than uh die fighting for what they believed in, who, you know, became colonizers or were colonized, which are, you know, you're colonized and then you become a colonizer. Like it's this weird domino effect. But I believe that there is a reason that they chose to go with that flow and migrate here. There's a reason I ended up where I am, and not necessarily some, you know, perfectly tied up with a bow reason, but like probably a series of little mini reasons that all led up to my existence in this space. Um, and I feel like uh, the reason that I feel so attached to those things is because that is something that I recognize as a part of me. Um, Obviously, you know, if you're coming from like an I what is it as me perspective, everything is a part of you. But while I can relate to almost anything if I really try, uh the things that call me the most are things that I think about whenever Jen Marie asks those sort of questions of like, what are you picturing when you're picturing your perfect reality? I'm picturing the things that feel like home, while knowing that that is something that is inherently already a part of me, no matter where I am. Go ahead, Kat. Do you need help unmuting? Maybe Maria could help. Maria, are you there? I know that she's always juggling like a bunch of things. She is just so amazing. And she also might need a bio break because we're all human. So
Maybe I'll speak to a little bit to Kat. So until Maria can come back in or pop in if anything. Or not Kat, but Karen. If you want to put your stuff in the chat, maybe we can read it like we've been doing with Karen and Samantha.
You're just saying in the chat that she just needs help unmuting. So.
Karen, yeah. But I don't know if
Oh, sorry.
Karen looks like she needed help unmuting, and Kat looks like she might need help unmuting, but I don't know if Maria's around. She had a work thing she had to go to. Like she said her work.
I'm
was-
here.
Oh, that's
Sorry,
what
I'm
you were
popping
saying. Okay,
in
I'm
and out.
sorry.
Who needs help unmuting?
Kat
Cat. Let's see. If I
and
press,
Faye might too. I wasn't sure if you wanted to speak on that, Karen, but I also wanted to say that if you want to speak on that, we would listen.
so there's if you're on your phone, sometimes it looks a little different, but there should be a little microphone in like the bottom left that says mute, and you just kind of click and unclick that. And sometimes on your phone, you have to tap the screen for that to kind of pop up from the bottom part, and then you can see all the different options.
Thank you so much, Maria. Super weird. I have been tapping. I've gone in and out of the Zoom so many times to try and get it, but until you showed up, I couldn't get that line to show up. So I have no idea. I don't know. Maybe this is just maybe I have some shame about my family. Maybe I have some, I don't know, maybe I'm just still hurt by my family and I'm still grieving. But it's just really hard to focus on the lineage because I just don't like the people in my family. Like, none of them. And I have a very small family. It's almost all women. In fact, if you look at, I lost a son, my grandmother lost a son, everyone else was girls except my sister has born a son and now a he, they, and almost likely, I'm just a very feminine soul, say it that way. We're all girls in some form or another. All the boys were killed off before they were a day old. And the women are just fucking mean. Excuse my language. It's just really hard to focus on that lineage. And so Petra, you said you got some violent people. I hear that. I just don't know how to come to terms with it. I really don't. I'd like to get past this. And yeah, there's been a lot in the last 2 months. I think I'm probably just grieving. That's what's coming up. I just have to grieve and accept that this is it and then move on, move forward. But if anybody has any thoughts on this, I'm certainly open to it because I'm kind of tired. You know what I mean?
So I can continue to try to help Kat and let's see Petra, you want to weigh in on that?
Yeah, that's cool. One, I think, Karen, like your grief, super valid. Super valid. I remember the literal physical ick in my body the first time I heard about ancestor work. I was just like, what the F? These people are a train wreck. Absolutely not. I was like, miss me entirely with all of that nonsense. Like, I have, yeah, I'm estranged from both of my parents. My dad was estranged from his dad. My mother's mother, like alcoholic. Like, it's like name the fuckery and just like it's sprinkled everywhere, like when I went to England, one of my uncles like just needed to info dump about our family history and make sure that I knew that I had a great grandfather who owned a brothel, and I was like, great, like they love that for me. What a great person to have in my bloodline. What the frick? It's like, I hate this. Are any of you decent at all? Like, what the hell? So when people would talk about ancestor work, I was just like, like, who, what, why? I don't want to talk to any of these people. Like, I didn't want to talk to them when they were alive. I definitely don't want to talk to them now that they're gone. And I remember someone on TikTok it was like, I think it was Our Lady's speech, who was talking about like benevolent ancestors, and especially for white folks and even for people of color, being like, call in your benevolent ancestors, or your ancestors who want to heal, who want to help you, because we all have like people who are deep in the fuckery in our bloodlines. But there are people, and you may have never met them, that might be part of it. It's like these people might not be, they might not be known to you, that still want to support you. And even people who, like, for all of my life I hated my mother's mother, because my mother's mother is why my mother was the way that she is, and why I never had a mother was like because she didn't have a mother. She had an alcoholic who like exposed her to a litany of danger. And then I did that kind of Samhain Celtic journeying ritual, and met both of my grandmothers, who like I've learned from both of them the ways in which they have been protecting me, even though I despised them, even though I was like, you're both cowards, like what the heck. And I was so hard on them. And I'm not saying that those feelings weren't warranted, because that anger kept me safe, but it also prevented me from grieving. And it also was like misdirected, because I was mad at them for being a product of their own families and their own times and their own trauma. And I mean, that's totally a way to do things. I think that that's super fair. I think it's super, like, we're all entitled to be pissed at anybody who's ever like brought harm into our lives. And for me, realizing like, oh, like you protected me and have cared for me my entire life, even though I hated you. And there was something in that that shifted shit for me and made me be like, interesting, this is more complex than the binary that I've set this up in. And I'm not saying that like it's straightforward, but I think that for me, whenever I talk to people about ancestor stuff, I'm like, call in your benevolent ancestors, call in your healing ancestors, and start there. You don't have to deal with the fuckery people ever. Like my great grandfather was a violent and horrible man. He was like a malignant narcissist. He was awful. Like awful. He literally terrorized me as a 4-year-old, like for fun. And almost got thrown through a wall by my dad because of it. Like it was one of those kind of dynamics where like my dad curse broke and then took me to meet his parents, and then they decided to like try the thing and like just do the same dynamics, and he was like, absolutely not. And I don't know that I'll ever interact with my grandfather. Like, I don't know that that's ever a thing that I'm going to be in a place to do. There's been times where I'm like, maybe I should. And I just like, I'm like, I'm not ready yet. And I don't know that I'll ever be ready. And I don't know that we have to be ready to work with all of them, because I think that there's tons, like, I know that I have ancestors that I work with that are like 1,000 years ago ancestors. And so it's, I think that we can get hung up on like our immediate familial line and all the people we already have faces and names for, and not realize that there are people who, like, you know, 7 upon 7 generations back have been helping us, have been being there, and are just waiting to be asked to be invited to do more. And I think that that also can, for me anyway, as someone who's like, I don't really feel like I have family, that sense of that ancestral connection has really helped me feel less alone. Like I do have family, I just have never physically met them. And I will meet them when I die. Like, you know, that kind of a thing. So I hope that's helpful.
I switched to my phone.
Awesome.
I'm
I
like,
think
this isn't
Karen,
working.
I just want to give Karen a moment to,
Okay.
I think, maybe respond. Are you, Karen? I know it's like super annoying with the phone, like, cause you tap it and sometimes like the bottom comes like, goes like up and down to try to get that thing to pop up. But we're really good at holding space. Just to give you a moment, if you wanted to reply to Petra. And Kat, I'm happy the phone works. It must be some sort of setting your computer's like not for some reason with the Zoom.
Yeah,
These
like, and that, and I said I'm in between keyboards, so sometimes it registers my Mac keyboard and it was giving me Mac keyboard instructions, but I have like the other keyboard, but when I was trying the Mac keyboard, even it was going beep 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 beep, like, no, we're not going to take your input. I'm like, shut up. I'm like, just switch to the phone. Yay, you got it.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
yes.
Oh, okay. Gosh. Technology. That was really helpful. Thank you so much. Kind of being free to not deal with my family and my immediate family is really nice. I've been trying to rationalize their behavior a little bit with, I don't know what they came into this life, with this particular life is their journey. Like maybe this is the life that they're shits. And you know, I'm just a piece of that, and that's their story, and this is my story. And okay, and I'm just trying to let it go that way. I'm sorry all this stuff happened to you though. It is cruel, and thank you. It helped a lot to not know, not feel like I'm trapped with them, and I will totally find some cool people in the past. Thank you so much, Petra. Thank you, everybody. I appreciate you.
Okay. Kat, over to you.
I've been working on my genealogy. So I've been studying my ancestors and their past and finding those connections. So I kind of am familiar with that idea. I actually today and before I stopped in, while I was waiting for my husband to release me so I can join you all, and just another mention of how connected we are. I was on Amazon looking up ancestor oracles because I was called to look up ancestor oracle decks because I feel that if when I do move into oracle that's where I want to be, is working with my ancestors. So that's what I felt called to look up, is an ancestor oracle deck. I'm just trying to find the right one for me. A lot of them are more native based, and I'm like, well, probably not for me. I want to try something a little bit more in tune with my own ancestry if I can find something. But I originally wanted to comment too is we were talking a lot about lucid dreaming at the same time, and I've been having a lot of lucid dreaming lately. I think I don't really get a lot of people talk a lot about synchronicities, and I don't get really a lot of synchronicities. One person told me that I was just closing my mind to them, and I honestly think that it's more my spirit guides know that they just speak directly to me, and I pick up on that. Um, Not only through verbal things in my head, but through my dreams. And the dream I had the other day was one of those examples of something that I need to work on and that's in my shadows. I have these dreams where I'm going through these massive buildings, houses and stores, and I'm going up and down the aisles, and I'm searching and I'm searching and I'm searching and I'm looking and observing, and I'm seeing things from my past, and I'm seeing all different kinds of things in front of me that I need to bring my attention to. And yesterday I came around the corner and there was my mom as a teenager standing there in front of her locker. And I just registered this shock. And then I just burst down in tears. She was literally right in front of me, but I was just sat there crying on the stairs, not even going to her, not even like embracing her, none of that. I just sat there and cried and cried and cried. And I woke up and I'm like, you obviously have to deal more with your grief over losing your mother, because that's something I don't think I've really allowed myself to process enough. And that was really the message that I got from that lucid dream that said, they do those things with me. It's just kind of interesting. But yeah, another quick example of my ancestor and my guides talking to me is ideas popping into my head. And I had one just yesterday, and I don't know where these things come from, and that's where I'm like, I think that's who's talking to me. We're standing there trying to figure out why my thermostat is always off, why it registers warmer than any other place in the entire room. It's in my living room, and it's in this one particular spot that should be the perfect place to put it. And this little voice in my head said, it's right above the furnace, it's too warm. And I'm like, that makes complete sense. I told my husband that. I said, I think there's like warm air coming up through the floorboards and through the walls and going right up to our thermostat where it's always registering warmer than the rest of the room. And he's like, that makes sense. And I'm like, I don't know where I came up with that idea, but it just literally popped right into my head. And there you have it. But anyway, I just wanted to participate. I'm going to be working like every Sunday now, which kind of sucks. So I'm so happy. And I just wanted to say thank you to all of you. I will be always listening, but I'm going to be more listening than anything.
Thank you, Kat. Thank you everyone too for doing just an amazing job with this awesome conversation and modding yourselves today. And I apologize, I had like emergency going on. So thank you. Felt like that I could step away and just take that call. I just wanted to say with the ancestor work and things like that. So part of like, and if this, I'm going to just share my perspective on it. So if this resonates with other people, part of my deconstruction process that I've really been doing actually for a long time, first in therapy and now more with the shadow work perspective here is deconstructing from what words mean, especially family names like mother, father, brother. And so deconstructing of like what that relationship is supposed to look like because they have a certain title, like brother. And so like doing that and kind of then just evaluating for me what the relationship actually is, separate from what someone has decided is supposed to be because of how they are, how we all incarnated here, whether how we are related. So deconstructing from all of that and separating myself from what the words are and what someone has told me those words are supposed to mean and what the idea of what those relationships are supposed to look that like from a society standpoint, and then just kind of evaluating those relationships as they are, and then that is what really helped me to kind of put boundaries up and process the guilt of if I chose not to then go no contact with people in my life. And so and now like where I'm at the point now is really being able to, okay, forget what the name says, forget what we're supposed to be, but like what has been our relationship and do I want to interact, going forward. And I love what Petra was saying about, since the beginning of time, all we have ancestors, whatever that even means, the beginning of time. But, there's definitely ancestors going all the way back that, we could explore that as well, just not the ones here and I'm not going to even pretend to understand at this point, but it's something that I have been like thinking about. And Heather mentioned Bashar. He is someone that, or they are someone, he's a channeled, Bashar is a channeled being from a gentleman. And I do watch a lot of their TikToks that it just comes up for me a lot, some of the messages that has been shared there and synchronicities that I have. So that is something that kind of really interests me, and that kind of perspective is interesting. And I'm kind of at this like reevaluation point where I'm really like evaluating like all the information that I thought I knew or that I thought was true about the way where all of this works, and like kind of just being open to other ideas. So that's an interesting thing. And what Ocean had said also about the connection to the elements, and things like that is also something really cool to explore. So thank you to Ocean for mentioning that, beyond like the human and ancestor connection. Ezra.
Yeah, I was actually just going to bring that up because I really like the idea of going back uh, to non-human ancestors and like the elements. And I don't know, like if you wanted to, you could, whatever you relate to the most, like we were talking about, you could go to the ocean, like we all came from the ocean. If you really relate to frogs, like you could go back to like when humans were like tadpoles, like, or, that kind of creature, like you could make it how whatever you wanted, like you and like they kind of already said that don't have to focus on the people that that are very close to you that are currently or in recent history doing things that are not to your values. Another thing that came up for me with that is that if it felt aligned to interact with more human ancestors, you could try to interact with their higher self, because I think that everybody continues to grow. And even if you're not seeing that on the physical plane, or, like they died before they ever learned to not be racist, like that kind of thing, like they will continue growing, like beyond the veil, essentially. And I think that that's, everybody has a higher self that is, close to source. And so if you wanted to specifically interact with that person, but you didn't want to have the, bad vibes of how you remember them right now, you could, interact with a version of themselves that is higher. And I think that actually kind of ends up putting you or brighter, like we say sometimes here, like that. I think that also could potentially put you in touch with a brighter version of yourself as well in order to interact with them. So that was something that just that felt right to say. So thank you so much for bringing that up. Let's see. Ocean has something.
Yeah, I just wanted to jump on the coattails of something you said, because I love that idea of interacting with their higher selves. And I kind of just wanted to validate that perspective, because I was thinking that by doing the deconstruction work that we've done, and like understanding that it's not okay to be racist, and like then enacting action behind those new beliefs, we are doing the deconstruction for our ancestors. They like, and when I call them in, I always say, like, whoever wants to support the work that I'm doing, like I call in who is supportive of the path that I'm on and the work that I'm doing. I guess I believe that not all of my ancestors would support me, and there's probably some shadow work to do in that. But I think that there are, what I believe is that both polarities exist in my ancestry, in all aspects of my ancestry, and I am accepting of that. But I am specifically calling in those who are wanting to support connection-based magic rather than dominion-based. Because I think that they're both valid, but that's not the choice that I want to make with my practice, because I've seen more results with connection-based magic. I've tried dominion-based magic, and I find that it's not as exhausting on my body, because when I'm trying to do dominion-based magic, it feels like my whole system is going into trying desperately to control something that I don't actually believe is within my control. So if I'm coming from a shadow work perspective and a connection based perspective, and starting from that belief that this thing is not in my control and learning to accept that rather than fight against that, it just it loops back in on itself. That's the best way I can describe it. Like it feeds back into itself in the form of a relationship between me and that thing that I am no longer trying to control.
Thank you, Ocean. So we are at that point where we say goodbye for now. For those of you that might be new here, how we kind of work in these spaces is just sharing perspectives. And, one way you can kind of explore different things if someone says something that like sounds exciting to you, or it kind of felt like remembering, that could just kind of be a sign to maybe go down that rabbit hole a little bit further. But there is no way, like at Bright and Dark, no one's going to present you like this is the way to do anything. It's really just supporting each other in our journeys in repairing our relationship with our intuition and our higher selves, and just kind of following that journey and being here in this supportive space to share all of our different perspectives, which is different than some of us have experienced in the past. And so there you go. The S.A.S.S are always awesome, and we could probably go for 5 hours, but we do try to keep it to about 2, and we'll be back here next week. S.A.S is a space where we just come and chat every week. There's no pre-planned, everybody can share. And then for the foundations program, we do have our sacred space meetings at the beginning of the month and our witch work circle meetings at the end of the month. But if any new members need help like navigating the program, or like what do I do, like where do I find anything, you can hit us up on the website in the chat, or just support@brightanddark.org, and we'll connect there. That's all, witches. Thanks for coming. We'll see you next week. Bye, everyone. Thanks for being here.
Bye. Have a good day.
Thank you. Bye.